G'day, I'm Rob.
And I'm Dave.
And you're listening to the Doctor Who show where... Oh, hang on, you're just back from holidays, aren't you, Dave?
I am back from 5 weeks out of Melbourne, of which 2 were holidays, yes.
Wow. And you went where?
I went to Hawaii.
Lovely. For our folks in the Northern Hemisphere, we're just coming out of winter, so of course Hawaii sounds like paradise to me at the moment.
It was very, very nice. I only got the very tail of the hurricane system, so that was good. But look, yeah, very nice, very relaxing, very refreshing. I also got to indulge my Jurassic Park fanboyness, and I did the Jurassic Park helicopter ride down through the valley and into the waterfall where the helicopter lands in the movie. And I also went to the area at the far end of one of the Hawaiian Islands where they actually filmed a lot of those shots for the shot where the Sensorites, the Gallimimus, and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, I did do a bit of fanny stuff, but also had a very nice, relaxing holiday. So good to be back, and thanks to Mike Solko for keeping the seat warm while I was away. Well done.
Absolutely, you did a great job. And I'll just say, I've got someone at my work, hello Natalie, who is insanely jealous that you did all that Jurassic Park stuff. She is the poster girl, I guess you could say, for that whole Jurassic Park was the Star Wars of a certain generation. She doesn't even know what Star Wars is, but Jurassic Park, massive.
Yeah, I'm definitely part of that generation. I was 12 or 13 when Jurassic Park hit the screens, and for me that was that moment of sitting in the cinema and going, wow, this is a whole new generation, a whole new thing. It was, for me, seeing Jurassic Park was what I imagined seeing Star Wars was for the generation above mine. So yeah, really, really excited to do that.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Now, we have got loads to crack through in this episode because, as I was about to say earlier before I launched into that whole Hawaii spiel, this is our Hartnell episode, Dave. You're finally getting your Hartnell episode. I
genuinely was getting a bit excited this afternoon as I was putting the finishing touches to my notes, but we'll talk more about Hartnell later. But yeah, I'm actually very excited to be talking about my favourite Doctor. So yeah, let's crack in, because not only that, Doctor Who is back in a week.
I know, isn't that insane?
It is. It's madness. It feels like just yesterday that we were saying there's no news, there's no leaks, there's no press announcements. But the last probably 4 weeks we've just been slammed with Doctor Who, and we're now in that kind of horrible darkness before the dawn moment where everybody's excited, everybody's passionate, but no one has any actual Doctor Who to talk about, so they're talking about everything but, and getting angry and having fights about speculation and guesswork. And it's, guys, relax, it'll be on our screens in a week.
Yeah, we've got a few news stories about it, and we'll crack through them pretty quickly, but then something a bit longer in our mini topics that I want to discuss, and it comes straight from the top, straight from Chibnall.
Cool. Well, look, yeah, we will crack into it. I mean, and to make the serious point, given that Doctor Who actually will be back in a week and we'll be watching a real episode so we can have real opinions about real scenes and real performances, we're not going to dwell too much on the speculation and the fan arguments and stuff, because, yeah, before you know it, we'll have real stuff to talk about. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. But just to talk about the local experience, I guess, Dave, Monday, 8th of October, it's back. 5:45 p.m. on ABC TV. It's like we're back in the 80s.
It is. It's like I'm 8 years old again watching the McCoy era, which famously was put out at 5:30 on the ABC because nobody cared about it anymore. It was just sort of put out with, you know, Degrassi Junior High and the Cities of Gold and Press Gang and all the other sort of kids' TV shows. It is a bizarre choice, Rob. Now, I'm a big fan of Doctor Who moving to the Sunday nights in the UK. I think that can once again be event viewing. It can find an audience. I'm a really big fan, and I don't begrudge the BBC moving it at all. That obviously has a flow-on effect for Australia, but that's not the BBC's problem.
No.
But what the ABC is doing here is utterly bizarre. All the viewers who need to watch Doctor Who the moment they physically can will be watching it on iView anyway. So the ABC will release it on iView in Australia at the same time as it's being broadcast in the UK, so sort of 5, 6 a.m. in the morning. That's fine. Some people will wake up early and watch it on iView. I think I'll wait till I get home from work on the Monday. But that's fine. We can rush home and do that. iView lets us do it. Who's therefore going to be watching it at 5:45 p.m.? Like, dedicated fans who have to watch it as soon as possible will have eye-viewed it. And nobody's home at 5:45 p.m.
Oh, look, I know. I mean, if I don't get up early and watch it that morning, you talk about watching it on iView later that day. Yeah, I'll be watching it on iView after it's actually screened now. I'll be watching it on, like, Mondays at 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. You know, it's already screened at that point. It's a crazy time.
It is. I don't understand who this is aimed at. I get the ABC is going to struggle to put it on in prime time on Monday, because Monday, sort of for about the last 40 years in Australia, on the ABC has had that lineup. You have the news, the 7:30 report, something, and then you have Four Corners and Q&A, which for our UK listeners, that's like having Panorama and Question Time back to back on a Monday evening, and it's big deal viewing. They're not going to move that, but we have ABC 2, and we have Tuesday night, so anybody who has to watch it instantly can watch it on iView. Everybody who's just going to watch it as a casual viewer when it's on could watch it on ABC 2 or watch it on Tuesday night or Wednesday night. I don't get why they're rushing to put it on free-to-air. It makes no sense to me at all. But I guess I don't care, because I'll be watching it on iView, as you say, though, after broadcast, which is really weird.
Yeah, and look, the only thing I will say about this time slot is I've been thinking for a few months now that this series could skew a bit more kid-friendly, and certainly at that time slot, I think in the UK it will be on later, but if they're going to play it at 5:45 here, I'm wondering if it is more of a kid-friendly series this time around.
Look, it could be a very deliberate decision to put it in that kid time slot, but a lot of people are not home from work at 5:45, so yeah, maybe you're right. I guess we will know more in a week.
Moving right along, and this isn't Series 11 related, it looks like the next Blu-ray set we get after the Davo set, which of course I'm very excited about, could potentially be Season 10. Now this comes about, Dave, because you and I belong to an Australian Doctor Who fan group on Facebook, and one of the chaps there had written to Roadshow, who distribute the DVDs locally, to ask about, I think, DVDs that were out of print or what was coming down the pipe. He had a few questions for them. And they just replied and said, yeah, look, here's our schedule. And on it there was the Davo stuff, but there was also Season 10 Blu-ray, collector's edition. Not only that, though, Dave, but they also mentioned the Wheel in Space is coming as well. And I thought, good gravy, we're onto something here. Not only are we getting pretty much confirmation that the next box set is a Pertwee box set and it's Season 10, but it looks like, I would say they've reconstructed Wheel in Space. I don't think they've found it. I think it's a reconstruction that they did for the BritBox service over in the UK, and it looks like they might be dropping that sometime in 2019.
Yeah, these are very exciting little tidbits. It makes a lot of sense that the next Doctor to get a Blu-ray release would be Pertwee, because he's got 5 seasons to get out. He's a very popular Doctor. His seasons have actually got quite a number of episodes that would lend themselves well to a box set, in the way that I think, a McCoy box set of 14 episodes wouldn't quite work as well. It's in colour. And given that, Season 10's a really cool choice. Look, I know I would love Season 7. It's my favourite season. But I think that, Spearhead from Space has already had 47 releases. The other stories, there are issues with the colour that might take a bit more time and money. Likewise for Mind of Evil in Season 8. But Season 10, there's no bad story in Season 10. That is 5 really cool stories, and a couple of real good classics like Frontier in Space, The Green Death, The Three Bloody Doctors.
Exactly. Mike Solko and I, for people who heard us last month, were saying, it's probably Season 7, precisely for the reason that, hey, they've already got the Blu-ray treatment on Spearhead from Space, so they don't have to do it again. The previous 2 releases have been the first season of a new Doctor. It all sort of made sense that it would be Season 7, but no, it looks like it's 10.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool decision. They're great stories. Carnival of Monsters is fantastic. Planet of the Daleks, look, it's not the best Pertwee or the best Dalek story, but it's a lot of fun. Presumably they'll have to use the cleaned up episode 3, yep, which is fine. No, that'll be a really cool box set, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that one if that comes true. And The Wheel in Space could be a really interesting release as well. I've often said that the problem with The Wheel in Space is that some of the best episodes are not in existence, and I think it will go up in people's estimation if they can see the whole story. Episode 1 with the servo robot and the adventures on the Silver Carrier. Episodes 4 and 5, where the Cybermen actually invade and take over the wheel. I think they're the best ones out there, and this could be a really good fill-up for a story I'm quite fond of.
I think so too.
Excellent. Well, we'll keep chugging along then, because we have got a lot to do. One thing that we did want to mention about the upcoming season of New Who is there have been multiple stories, and I saw another article quoting Chris Chibnall again this morning, confirming that in the next season there will be no returning monsters, no River, no Missy, no Strax, no Daleks, no Cybermen, none of that sort of stuff. It's all going to be new and original. And I say fair enough.
I say fantastic, Dave. I think this is wonderful. And finally, it puts paid to that rumour that people still repeat, oh, they have to have Daleks because of an agreement with the nation state. No, people, that's just a myth. And for once, we're not going to have bloody Daleks.
Yeah, look, I'm very comfortable not having River or Missy or Strax. It's well known I'm not a particular fan of any of those, although I think Missy had a couple of good episodes and River had a couple of good episodes. But, the Daleks and the Cybermen is an interesting one, and my view remains that you only use the Daleks or the Cybermen if you've got a good story to tell. And the classic series has been guilty of this as much as the new series, Rob, where someone will say, just go write me a Dalek story. Well, what Dalek story? I don't care, Eric. Just go write a Dalek story. We need Daleks this season. Yeah. That's not how you do it. If somebody comes to Chibnall and says, I've got a really cool Dalek story, I've got a really cool Cyberman story, it goes like this, boom, 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 and Chibnall goes, yeah, that's a great story. Okay, we'll use the Daleks. Now go write that. Great. But if no one's pitching that, you don't put them in and force them into something where it's not going to work. And it could well be that when we see season 11, we go, God, there's no way you'd put the Daleks in this. It would just be so awkward. So I say fair enough.
Yeah, certainly New Who has skewed newer viewers into thinking that these monsters have to turn up all the time or something. In fact, there were people on the Facebook group saying, oh, you've got to have Daleks, you've got to have Cybermen, this is what made Doctor Who, and I was like, you realise Cybermen didn't turn up for all of the Pertwee era, right? And,
yeah, and
only once
Tom
in Tom
era.
Baker, and he's the longest Doctor. It's not like you have to have these guys turn up. In fact, I would rather they are used sparingly, so I'm all over this. I think it's great if Whittaker gets her second series and probably a third series. I think she'll meet them eventually, and I think it'll be very exciting. But for the first outing, let's just see something new for once. I'm all behind this. I think it's great.
Yeah, and Davo didn't see the Daleks until his third last story.
Yeah, exactly right.
I'm sure that Jodie will meet the Daleks at some point in her very long run.
Oh, absolutely. Heck, who knows? She might even have a little flashback to Daleks in this series. It could be Chibnall sort of, stretching the truth a bit. There isn't a Dalek story, but maybe she'll have a dream about them or something. We'll see them anyway. Who knows?
Who knows?
All right, we promised we wouldn't go too deep into Series 11, at least until our mini-topic, so I'll move right along and say Christopher Eccleston has a memoir coming out next year, Dave.
He does indeed, and I'm very curious to read this one. There's not a lot of actors whose memoirs I would go out and grab, but I think Eccleston, if he is true to his personality, this could be a really interesting book.
Yeah, I can only think of a few that I've enjoyed reading over the years. I think My Wicked, Wicked Ways by Errol Flynn would be up there. But this one is, yes, I think he's going to dump on the show. Not in a bad way. I think he's just going to reveal what actually happened. And I think his little dropping nuggets over the last year or two about what went on after he was silent for so long might be a precursor to this book having everything in it. At least I'm hoping so.
Yeah, look, I think it could be really interesting. But also some of the films he's done, it's known that he was quite disappointed with how they turned out. Hello, Thor 2. And... I don't know that he's necessarily going to dump on everyone, because I assume he still wants to work in Hollywood after this comes out. But, yeah, potentially there could be some insights in there, and I'll wait to see what the reviews say and whether it is bland or, not tell all, but tell something. And if it is tell something, I will buy it.
If he does the voice on the spoken version of it, I might get that instead of the book.
Oh, I hadn't considered that, but now I am.
I think that'd be all right.
Yeah. Another quick piece of news, Rob. No real details, but I thought it would be fun to mention. Someone somewhere, we don't know a lot of details, is pitching another K9 series.
Great.
Look, I just find it really interesting because this would be the, fourth spin-off to involve K9. I mean, we had
Something
K9
like
and
that.
Company. He turns up in the Sarah Jane Adventures. We had the Australian Kids K9 series, and now they're looking to do another one. I mean, that's pretty impressive for a last-minute addition to the TARDIS back, 30 years ago. We'll watch this space and see if anything comes of it, but I thought a few of our listeners might be quite excited to hear that.
Oh, there will be for sure. There are people who adore K9. Personally, he bores the pants off me. I never liked K9, not even as a kid. And I couldn't be less interested. But for some people, this is absolutely amazing stuff. So yeah, happy to report it. And finally, Dave, for our news segment, there is a new trailer for Series 11 of Doctor Who. I thought it was probably just worth mentioning, briefly at least. It looks big, it looks colourful. There is that kid-like element to it with the way the Doctor's narrating it about, getting around with the pals and all that sort of stuff. It's interesting. What did you make of it?
I thought it was fine. I thought it was very typical of trailers in 2018, the style, the tone, the music. I was just more amused by the fact that the people who put together these trailers, it must be a horrible job, because they are on a hiding to nothing, because if they show, very sparse and suggestive but nothing like that, then you get a whole bunch of people saying, they showed me nothing. They've clearly got nothing to show. It's going to be terrible. Damn them. Give me something to get excited about. If they show actual scenes from the show or anything like that, how dare they spoil it for me? They're evil, they're bastards. You know that's going to be the reaction whenever you do. The one thing I will say, though, it looks as though a lot of cash has been spent on this season.
Yeah, the special effects, are you thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the location work, and yeah, it looks good. It looks very good. But again, I just can't get past this idea that it's very big and colourful and just could be for kids, which isn't a bad thing. We were all kids once.
You're right. But that said, you think of something like the pilot last year. That was very big and colourful as well.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So yeah, I've been saying a lot on social media lately, Dave. This series could go one of two ways. It could be really, really good, or it could be really, really bad. And I really don't know which way it's going to go.
I have absolutely no idea what to expect from this. I don't know what tone it's going to be. I don't know what sort of style it's going to be. I don't know whether it's going to be Earthbound or not Earthbound or... Wow, I know so little. I think it's going to be new. I think it's going to be fresh. I think it's going to be different. And I'll know if I like it in a week's time.
Well, maybe even sooner when we get to our mini topics.
Maybe. But, yeah, look, as I say, a lot of people are getting very worked up about different aspects of the new season. My real thought is, guys, chill. You'll have the real thing in a week.
Yeah,
just relax.
Exactly right. Shall we move on?
Yes, so only one mini topic each this month, Rob. And I wanted to mention our friends at the @Doctor Who Novels Twitter feed.
Absolutely.
Now, I've mentioned this a couple of times, where there's a Twitter feed dedicated to finding the best Doctor Who books ever. And it's been going for months and months and months, and I'm a regular voter, and they've had all the preliminary rounds where different books be put against each other, and it's like a tennis open. It's all being weeded out and weeded out and weeded out until you get right to the top. Now, about a month ago, on the non-fiction side of the draw, the Writer's Tale won that category, defeating the Discontinuity Guide.
What an interesting matchup.
Really interesting matchup. I confess I voted for the Discontinuity Guide just because I'm so fond of that book. And it's so funny and so exciting, and it's so new when it came out. One thing that really interested me, though, was that the House Stammers Walker books, like the 60s and the 70s and a couple of others, they did all right, but they got eliminated much earlier than I thought they would. And it just shows, 20 years ago, they were it. They were everything.
Yeah, and I think they're still pretty good today.
They're damn good today, but yeah, they didn't quite get as far as I thought. But I appreciate why The Writer's Tale got through to the end. I mean, that's a really insightful and interesting book. So yeah, that was interesting. But the finals for the fiction section are almost over. And I wanted to just mention this to some of our listeners, because I think the choices are really interesting. So the top 8 quarterfinals. The Cave Monsters versus the Five Doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And the Cave Monsters won.
Yeah, see, I don't get that at all.
I totally get that. Well, the Cave Monsters is my favourite novel. I was surprised the Five Doctors went so far. I mean, it's a lovely story that people have fond memories of, but it's not the most exciting of books, or like it doesn't go beyond the story that much, but it made it into the top 8.
It's comfortable, though.
It is very comfortable, that is true. In quarterfinal 2, the Infinity Doctors was defeated by Pyramids of Mars.
See, I wouldn't even expect many people to have even read the Infinity Doctors. You know, it's great. I found it very exciting the first time I read it. And, you know, trying to work out even who the Doctor... which Doctor are they talking about in the Infinity Doctors? It was like he was sort of McGann because he had a shaved head, but then he was like a guy who hadn't left Gallifrey, if I'm recalling the story correctly. Mm-hmm. So what was it, like a young Hartnell with a crew cut? What was going on? You know, I loved that book, but I don't expect many people to have actually read it here today in fandom.
No, and it was the only one of the BBC books to get through to the quarterfinals. So it did well, it represented its range, but Pyramids of Mars did win through. And I get that, because Pyramids is a very good novelisation of a very good story, but it's got that prologue and that epilogue and that extra little bit of love and detail that I think makes it appeal to people. Probably the biggest matchup was an exciting adventure with the Daleks versus Remembrance of the Daleks.
Yes. Now, they're very two differently written books.
Very differently written books, but you've got the one that kicked off the whole range in the first place versus the book that I think is kind of acknowledged as being the one that really started that second golden era of the Tiger books and set up that whole sort of more detailed and depthed McCoy era, and then on to the New Adventures. And Remembrance of the Daleks actually won in what I think was a bit of an upset.
Yeah, look, it's hard to say why precisely. Maybe it's just that more people enjoyed the TV episode, so they just voted for the book, even if they haven't read it. Or, you know, I just can't imagine today in modern fandom that many people have even gone back and read the first Daleks book. You know, because it is a very old book. It's written in an old way too.
True, but it does have a lot of fans who really, really love what it does. But no, Remembrance got through, and in the final quarterfinal, the only Virgin book to get through to the top 8 was Human Nature.
Oh, well, that's a good one.
And that came up against the Web of Fear.
Interesting.
And in a very tight result, Web of Fear won with 51%.
You know, based on all this stuff that you're telling me, I think there must be a lot of older fans who subscribe to this Twitter feed. I don't think it's newer fans.
Yeah, look, that could definitely be the case, but good to see Terrance Dicks had 3 entries into the top 8.
Well, it's like when the US goes to the Olympics, they stack it with so many people they can't not get some results, Dave.
Look, that is true. So in the semi-finals, the Cave Monsters, I'm very pleased to say, defeated the Web of Fear.
Okay.
And Remembrance, I think in what most people would have expected, defeated Pyramids of Mars.
Fair, yeah.
So, as to who won between the Cave Monsters and Remembrance of the Daleks to be voted the best Doctor Who novel ever, well, I think that the Doctor Who novels Twitter feed deserves some traffic, so I'm going to tell you to go and have a look and find out there.
Very good. It's a very good feed, and I was recently talking to the fellow who runs it about getting some books sent over from the UK to me, but the postage ended up being so outrageous we didn't go through with the deal, but a lovely bloke behind that feed. Yeah,
absolutely. Really good, really engaging, and I hope that something more comes of that feed afterwards. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you have a look and check it out.
Alrighty. Now, before we get to Hartnell, Dave, I'm going to do one more Series 11 thing, and I think this is well worth it. The Radio Times often does light and fluffy clickbait stories about Doctor Who. We all know that. But in this one, Chris Chibnall has actually written his manifesto of sorts, his top 13 reasons to watch Series 11, and I think there's some interesting nuggets in here, so I thought I'd rattle through each of them and give you a chance to just get your reactions, because you've been a bit more stepped back from Series 11 than me, so some of these facts could be new on you, could be new to our audience as well.
All right.
So let's rattle through them. Number 1, you don't need to know anything about Doctor Who. This is a pretty standard one, I think. Chibber says, if you've never seen Doctor Who before, the first episode is a perfect place to start. You don't need to know anything. Start here, will take you by the hand. And you'll love Jodie Whittaker's fizzing, funny, smart Doctor.
Look, the whole concept of the series is to get some new viewers in, to regenerate the viewers. The move in time slot says that, and that's how it should be. Doctor Who should always be accessible, just like spearheading space was, just like Robot was, just like the Twin Dilemma wasn't. This will be a good start. But Rose is the template there, and yeah, I think that's a good thing.
Number 2, and I think you'll like this one, Dave. Each episode will be a new adventure. The series is made up of 10 standalone stories. Every episode is a complete story. The settings range from present day through centuries past, alien worlds and spaceships. Each week is a new treat. Did I also mention monsters?
That's very cool.
I thought you might like that.
Yep. There has been some speculation that this series is basically going to be Broadchurch in time. But this sounds like it's going to be what I'm after. Fun adventures in space and time. Bring it on.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 3, Bradley Walsh is a proper star. He's playing Graham O'Brien, one of 3 new characters who are joining the Doctor on her adventures. Everything Bradley does, he excels at, from Quizmaster to singer and to being one of our best actors. He's even managed to conquer Instagram this year. I cast Brad in Law & Order UK a few years back and have wanted to work with him again ever since. Audiences love him. Now he's fighting aliens and both of us couldn't be happier.
Yeah, okay. Producer says his actor is good.
Moving on.
Yeah, look, I mean, I have really little knowledge of who Bradley Walsh is. After his casting, I did check him out in an episode of Law & Order UK, but totally indifferent there, and the producer's not going to say he was terrible, so yeah, whatever.
Alright, so in a similar vein, number 4, he's not the only one. 2 of Britain's brightest young stars, Mandip Gill and Tosin Cole, appear too. They play Yaz and Ryan, and they'll encounter a host of amazing guest stars.
Good.
Number 5, here be monsters. The Doctor and his friends will be fighting monsters, solving mysteries, righting wrongs, just as they've done for 5.5 decades now. You'll laugh, gasp, and your kids might hide behind the sofa.
Very good.
Good. Number 6.
Again, he's not going to say it's bad, is he?
That's true. Number 6, the Doctor's a woman, and that's okay. The Doctor is one of the television's most brilliant and enduring creations. The Doctor will still be the same mercurial, funny, strange, contradicted character, an adventurer in time and space, gathering up friends and solving problems by thought and wit rather than punches and violence. If you like the crew who work on the new series, just a few seconds with Jodie Whittaker's lively, warm, funny, super smart Doctor will have you wanting to follow this Doctor to the ends of the universe, Dave.
Well, again, that's lovely to hear, and I look forward to seeing how Jodie does. As I say, I'm going into her with a very blank slate and no expectations because I've never seen her in anything before. So that'll be interesting. But it's really good to hear Chibnall actually talking her up in terms of the legacy of Doctor Who, compared to some of these faceless BBC officials in the last few weeks who were kind of like trying to big her up by dumbing down the others. Like, forget about those silly old Doctors we used to have. Our new one's really cool. Like, no, dude, you don't have to knock down the other 12 to make 13 good.
Oh, gosh. Wasn't there one in the last 24 hours of us recording this episode where the journalist said something like, she's replacing Peter Capaldi, who admittedly audiences weren't all that into. And it's like, what?
Yeah, look, you can debate the Capaldi legacy in terms of ratings and whatever. That's fine. But I think a lot of people who watched him liked him. And regardless, you don't have to knock him down to make Jodie better, you BBC nitwits.
Exactly.
So, yeah, good to hear Chibnall's talking her up.
Okay, number 7, and I was quite excited by this one, Dave, and it's intriguing too. The theme music is the same, almost. Yes, the Doctor Who theme is one of the most iconic in TV history. I love it. It has been arranged this year by Segun Akinola, our new composer, taking the original recordings made by Delia Derbyshire and the Radiophonic Workshop in 1963 and refashioning them for today. Just as we've done across the whole show, building a thrilling new version while honouring the past.
That's really interesting. And it actually was crossing my mind this morning when I was thinking about the upcoming series that we haven't had a leak or a release of either the theme tune or the theme graphics.
Yes, and obviously they've done something here. My initial take is, okay, they've sampled the original theme and maybe, he's a modern composer. Maybe it's got like a... not a disco beat, but maybe a sort of a house beat behind it. Maybe there's like a bit of a pounding bass line behind it, but it's the original sounds or something.
You see, my take of what you just read was that they took the original sounds and sort of embiggened them and put some new, echo and depth and vibration. What I don't know what the technical terms are, but enhanced them in some way. So I sort of went in a different direction. But yeah, that'll be very interesting. And I think they are clearly holding that stuff over for a surprise when we see it all. So they've got something planned.
Yeah, look, anything's going to be better than the Capaldi theme. As much as I love Capaldi as a Doctor, his theme was just so thin and watery. That's about the best way I can describe it. I was never into that theme.
Oh, no, the Matt Smith one is the one that really annoyed me because they cut the diddly-dums out completely and just had that awful fanfare.
That sort of horn section, yeah, that was...
Yeah. I mean, no diddly-dum, not a Doctor Who theme.
No, not at all. Number 8, the mystery of the missing TARDIS continues. The TARDIS, the Doctor's unmistakable time and space machine, exploded and disappeared just as the 13th Doctor slammed into life on Christmas Day last year. Who knows where it is now? Maybe we'll find out. Yeah,
that seems to imply to me that maybe we'll find out quicker than we were expecting. Maybe that's the whole plot of episode 1 and then they get it. And if they're travelling back and forth in time, I assume they have the TARDIS?
Yeah, I'd like to think they get it back in that first episode too.
Yeah. Okay.
Number 9, new stars, new writers. Former children's laureate and acclaimed young adult novelist Mallory Blackman is one member of our new writing team this year, along with BAFTA winner Vinay Patel, Joy Wilkinson, Pete McTighe and Ed Heim.
Good.
Yeah, look, I think the only thing to add there, because I'm not familiar with these people's work, is it's just a lot of new names, and that could be really good for the show, actually.
Yeah, look, fresh ideas is always good for a show, and yeah, I don't know those people particularly, but cool.
Yep. Number 10, which we've already discussed, you won't find it on Saturday night. The show is moving to Sunday evenings, at least in the UK. Look for it from Sunday, 7th of October on BBC One. Start building your Sunday nights around it. Do your homework, get your Monday morning clothes and stuff ready before you settle down on the sofa with some snacks.
Yep, good move. And look, we've been talking about a move from Saturdays for, over a year now, so we have been vindicated, Rob.
I think so. Number 11, we've been keeping our secrets close to our chest. We've been working hard at staying quiet until now in order that audiences aren't spoilt, and also so that our stories make it onto the television in the most exciting way possible. But we're now getting excited about showing you Espo, a life-changing bike ride, Robertson, the Ux, Umbreen, Rosa, Desolation, Kandoka's Moon, and Ribbons. All of these things are on their way.
I have no idea what to make of that, and I guess I'll find out.
I guess some of them are names of monsters, some of them are names of planets. I'd like to think Desolation might be a planet. That sounds pretty exciting. And I think Ribbons might be a monster. I think there might be a ribbon monster coming, but I won't spoil anyone on that.
Okay.
Number 12, there's a galaxy of stars. One of the great joys of Doctor Who is there's a new set of characters each episode, meaning we get to work with new amazing guest stars each week. In the first 2 episodes alone, you'll see Sharon D. Clarke, Sean Dooley, Art Malik, and Susan Lynch. And we've got lots more names to reveal across the series.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's going to be interesting. I think sometimes there will be that factor where somebody who's a big name in the UK is a non-entity or an unknown, I should say, in Australia. But yeah, big name actors is good. It shows the series is being taken seriously.
Indeed. And finally, number 13, we can all live the dream. Did I tell you this is my dream job? Yes, it's more fun than I could have possibly ever have imagined. I get to write adventures for a character I've loved since I was a child, and I get to work with some of the most talented craftspeople in television, and sometimes we blow stuff up. I hope you have as much fun watching as we've had making it. The 13th Doctor is on our way. It's going to be a blast. Come and join us across all of space and time. It's going to be a universe worth of fun.
Well, I'm glad he's happy. Job satisfaction is very important.
I just like that he is constantly going back to the fact that he is an old school fan, and this is a character he's cared about for a long time. It's not someone stepping in and with a new Doctor, a female Doctor no less, and all these new changes coming, that he's going to do something radically hurtful or something to the show, because he's loved it all his life. Yeah,
no, look, I think that definitely comes through, and I guess we get to judge how successful he was, as I keep saying, in a week's time.
All right. Shall we move on?
So, Rob, a year ago, we did a episode that focused on your favourite Doctor, Davo.
Is that a year ago now?
It's a year ago. Possibly a little bit more.
Wow.
And I said at the time, that's fine. Sometime soon, we'll do my favourite Doctor.
Yes.
And tonight's the night.
It is. And I'm actually quite happy that we're doing it too.
Yeah, look, I generally am. As I said, I was prepping this last night and last week and this morning, and Mostly I was just trying to work out what I didn't have time to say, because there's so much I can say about the Hartnell era. But I've got my notes. I've tried to concentrate on the key aspects, and I'll try not to talk at too much length. But yeah, let's get into it. William Hartnell, the first Doctor, the original.
Absolutely, Dave. This is your baby, so I'm going to let you drive.
Yeah, so before we sort of get into our thoughts and opinions, I'm curious, Rob, because, look, let's be honest, neither of us were watching Doctor Who in 1963, and neither of us were watching Doctor Who in 1966 when he left either. So how did you discover William Hartnell?
Dave, I discovered Hartnell largely through Target novels. This would have been around 87, 88, 89, those sort of 3 years there. I did see the pilot episode in 87, and by that I mean the genuine pilot episode, the one that wasn't aired on TV. Some fans had a copy, and it was very VHS being copied too many times.
Yeah.
But that was quite magical to see, but not a lot of episodes. I didn't see a lot of episodes at all over those first 3 years of being a real sort of, ferret of a fan. They'd get screened at Doctor Who fan club parties, but generally they were on at the same time as things I wanted to watch, like season 24, so I wasn't going and watching them. So it was really the Target novels of that era. So think of stuff like The Massacre, the Time Meddler, Edge of Destruction, The Smugglers, stuff that was coming out around 87, 88, 89 as new releases. I was grabbing those and just eating them up. I thought they were fantastic.
Yeah, I certainly would have had my first encounter with the first Doctor via the Targets as well. We had them all up at the shelf at home, so I sort of grew up knowing there were multiple Doctors, because you could see them on the Target books. The first time I would have seen the first Doctor, I'm certain would have been in the 5 Doctors.
Mm.
And the second time would have been in the 3 Doctors. So I was aware of him through those anniversary stories, even though it's not Hartnell for the majority of the 5 Doctors, and he's not in a lot of the 3 Doctors, but I at least knew who he was and his role in Doctor Who mythos. I'm fairly certain the first time I saw a Hartnell story was at a Doctor Who Club meeting in 1987, where I saw the Aztecs.
Wow, that's very cool.
And I would have seen the Daleks a year later at a video day that they showed. And somewhere in there as well, I saw the Edge of Destruction. I'm not sure if that was before or after the Daleks. But through the Doctor Who fandom, I did start seeing these stories. And then some of his VHS releases came out. So I saw the Daleks again, the Dalek Invasion of Earth. But also, we had the audio tapes at the club that you could borrow. And so I had a number of them. Celestial Toymaker Part 4 I had on audio, and I absolutely loved that. That would be pulled out all the time. The Web Planet I remember vividly, because I just have these memories of being about 7, 8, 9 and listening to the Zabi on audio cassette as the cicadas went crazy in the Australian summer. So I came to him very much in a piecemeal way over a long period of time, and it probably took another 15 years before I'd seen all of his existing episodes.
Yeah, look, I'd be similar, until those videos started coming out, and then it was the DVDs. Some of the episodes I saw for the first time on DVD.
Oh, okay. Look, I'd definitely seen them all sort of by the time I'd finished school, because we had borrowed stuff from people in fandom. But yeah, it was very piecemeal, and it took a long time. And as you alluded to, Rob, some of those video cassettes, they were multiple generations, and they were not easy to watch.
No, they weren't. The better ones came from the US, of all places, where it had been on public broadcast television over there, and people had recorded them and sent them over. They'd been converted from NTSC to PAL and all that sort of malarkey, and then they were pretty good. They were very good, actually. But yeah, some of the more obscure things, like the pilot episode, yeah, that was
very much so. And of course, Unearthly Child was broadcast in 1993.
Yes, that's right. And a great episode, still, it is.
Very much so. Look, in a moment, Rob, I'm going to wax lyrical about why this Doctor in this era is my favourite. But before I do, what are your thoughts about Hartnell and the First Doctor and that era?
Look, I loved the way Hartnell was so different to the Doctors I'd grown up with, who were younger, particularly Davo. To then be reading these novels with this, acerbic, surly old guy getting around and being quite authoritarian and stuff, I really gravitated towards the character. I thought, this is something new, this is different. I am a historical buff, and so many of the stories were historically based. That was a big appeal to me as well. I mean, the Massacre, I just devoured the Massacre. I thought that was a wonderful novel, and I was so upset that it was a story that we couldn't actually see. So I just think his character, the historical stories, and just that sort of feel that he was like a Victorian man in outer space was just very appealing to me. I quite liked him.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear that.
How about you?
Look, Hartnell hasn't been my favourite Doctor for my entire lifetime. When I was a kid, it was Pertwee, and I still have a really soft spot for Pertwee. I still adore Pertwee, the Pertwee era, and that I think is that reflection of growing up with him in Australia, those continuous repeats, and there's a lot I like about his Doctor. But as I got older and as I saw more of Hartnell, I really did fall in love with his character and his era. I mean, as a character, he is everything that I think the Doctor should be. He can walk into a room and absolutely command that room. He is fun. He's naughty. He's also, though, he's incorruptible. The moral rigidity and that uprightness of his character is really, really strong. But at the same time, so often there's that twinkle in his eye, and he's just having fun. He's got no backstory, and he's got no rules, and he's not a Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey and the constellation of Castorberus who fights Daleks and has companions. He's just this weird alien guy having fun adventures. And he's doing it in an era where Doctor Who has no rules. They're just making this stuff up as they go along. And it is so imaginative. It is so lyrically written as well. This is Doctor Who written by a generation of writers who really came out of cinema, British cinema, out of theatre, out of the play for today concept. And they're writing Doctor Who with this real lyrical, utterly engaging way. As somebody who likes language and likes dialogue and likes characterisation, there's so much of it in this era. But it's all doing Doctor Who at its best. The historical stories, and we'll talk about this in a moment when we talk about season 1, the historical stories are some of the best you'll get. The sci-fi stories are some of the best you'll get. The companions are some of the best you'll get. And, okay, there are times when it's a bit slow, and there are times it doesn't quite work, and we'll talk about them, but this is just pure Doctor Who for me. Exciting, engaging, morally fun. I mean, let indulge me here, Rob. As somebody who would call himself a Gladstonian liberal or a classical liberal, there's so much of that in Doctor Who in this era. Those values really come through, those post-war values where this is a production team that, were actively themselves fighting fascism. And that comes through in this era. But that embrace of humanity comes through, that value of humanity. I mean, I've said before, lines like the Ark, you must travel with understanding as well as hope. That's an entire story about understanding other species and treating everyone as equals, and that liberalism comes through this era in a really wonderful way. So these are some of the reasons why I love this Doctor in this era so much. I suspect others will come up as we start to explore each season, interspersed with some different aspects of his era.
Do you think he's the most magical Doctor, Dave? And by that I mean he just has that aura about him that decreases as the Doctors go on.
Ooh, look, Tom would be up there, but yeah, you could definitely make that argument.
See, I see him as quite Yoda-like. When we first meet Yoda, he's giggling, he's twinkly, but he can turn very serious. We don't know much about him. He's just this odd alien. I sometimes think of him as Yoda. I know that's a weird thought.
No, I totally get that. When you ask him a question or something happens, you're never quite sure if he's going to sort of bark at you, "Oh, that's very, go away," or he's going to just go, "That's so funny." You just never quite know. Yeah, it's lovely.
Or to quote from the Crusaders, "Good afternoon." I still remember when you did that.
Yes. Good afternoon. Oh, it's so much fun. Look, what we're going to do, we're going to chat a little bit about each season. Not every story individually, but we will pull a number of them out. And in between, we'll also look at some other topics. So I might kick us off, Rob, with season 1. We're just going to talk about what we think of it and the stories we like and we don't like. And the first thing I think I need to say is how lucky are we that so much of this season exists? Because other than Marco Polo, you've got almost a complete run until you hit the Reign of Terror Part 4.
Oh, absolutely. Growing up as a fan, the first thing I learned about Doctor Who just about was there are missing episodes, and I assumed they'd be the earliest episodes. But how amazed and delighted I was that they weren't the first episodes.
No, it's a really wonderful thing. There are very few completely missing stories in the Hartnell era, and there's only one in the first 2 years, which is a great thing. But season 1, there is not a story in here I don't like.
Okay. Even the 3 parts of Unearthly Child that sort of drag a bit?
No, I think they're really great. I think the way that story comes together, the alienness of the world they're in, but the way that the Doctor and Barbara and Ian particularly are put together and slowly have to learn to respect each other. They don't like each other yet, but that slow respect that each of them has. And there's some wonderful little exchanges, particularly between the Doctor and Barbara in there, that I really like. I think it's a really wonderful first adventure, and the first part is just fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost incomparable for me to the next 3 parts, actually.
Yeah, look, I get that, but I mentioned earlier, in this season we see Doctor Who doing all the things it does at its best. You want historical drama, Marco Polo, fantastic. The Aztecs, amazingly brilliant. You want science fiction, well, you've got the Daleks. You want weird alien adventures and sagas and quests, you've got the Keys of bloody Marinus. I mean, how imaginative and inventive is the Keys of Marinus as a piece of television? So there's just so much good stuff in this. What are the standouts for you, Rob?
For me, look, we've already mentioned the first episode of An Unearthly Child. It's just fantastic. The Daleks I was never as into as people make out. Obviously the Daleks are brilliant. Obviously it's an interesting story, but it's very long. So I'll be controversial and not put that on my list. I always enjoyed Edge of Destruction more based on the Target novel than actually seeing the episodes. I didn't see them till long after I'd read the Target novel. That is a
really, really good book.
Yeah, it made me think this was just an amazing story and made me fascinated about being just inside the TARDIS doing stuff. Marco Polo, I think, yeah, that would be a winner. Again, based on the Target novel for obvious reasons.
But the audio's out there as well, and I can listen to the 7 parts of the Marco Polo audio. This is a top 10 story for me. It is such good characterization and so interesting, and it covers this journey from the heights of China right through Shangtu and Cathay and the Winter Palace, and the photos we have of it looks gorgeous, but it is so lyrically written. It's like a Shakespearean play as far as I'm concerned.
And that's very easy in these early years of Who, actually for maybe the first decade of Who. They're almost like plays on television, and they've just got some cameras at different angles that are capturing this play going on.
Yeah, literally right down to we're going to have 4 members of the regular cast so that whilst 2 people are off getting changed for the next scene, the other 2 can be on stage.
Yeah, precisely. And look, I just rattled off the first half of the season there, and I realised I could rattle off the second half of the season, because stuff like Keys of Marinus and the Reign of Terror I adore as well. I think I really like this whole first season.
Yeah, look, I do as well. Even the Sensorites, which I would say is probably the weaker link of the season.
Yes.
It starts off a little bit strange, it's a little bit slow, but it really does pick up as the story goes on. But this is the moment where the Doctor kind of becomes the Doctor that we know. And there's a really interesting contrast. There's a wonderful scene, looking back in hindsight, in part 1 of the Keys of Marinus, where Arbatan has said to them, I've got this quest I need you to go on. I need to go find these keys and restore justice to Marinus and find my missing daughter and everything. And he appeals to them to go. And then it cuts to them walking back going, oh, gee, I feel really bad we're not going to help him, but we can't do that. And then Arbatan puts the shield around the TARDIS and says, no, you're not going anywhere till you help me. And they're forced to do it. That's really weird looking back now, whether they're just like, look, we'd like to help this nice old man, but that's not what we do. In the Sensorites, that's the first time in Doctor Who, I think it was Lawrence Miles has made this point. That's the first time where, okay, the Doctor has ingratiated himself with the Sensorites. They're happy to let him go. He's cured Ian. Ian's healthy. They're all good. They could leave at the end of part 4. And the Doctor says, there's a mystery. There's something dodgy going on here, and I'm going to go off an adventure and find out what's going on, and I'm going to solve this problem just because I want to. And that's the first time we see that in the Sensorites. That's really important.
Yeah, this whole first season is just Doctor Who finding its way, and I think that's what makes it so interesting. They are doing different things. We don't know much about the characters and what's going on. It's just so exciting.
And speaking of those characters, let's just segue into a chat about the Hartnell companions.
Some great companions.
Look, we'll work through them quickly because I think they all deserve at least a line.
Yeah.
Susan, she has some great stories, she has some weaker stories. I don't think they ever quite worked out how to write her.
No, that's true.
But I'm a big fan. Barbara and Ian, though, I think it is a real testament that every generation of Doctor Who fans who goes back and discovers the Hartnell era, I think without exception, falls in love with Ian and Barbara.
Oh, without doubt. And we saw it most recently with the Twitch TV broadcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are such three-dimensional characters. They are our identification figures. In some ways, Ian is the lead in some of these early stories as well. Let's not forget that. So brilliantly acted. And I just can't praise them enough. I mean, you think about some of these scenes in something like The Romans, for example. These are two human beings, completely fully formed. And it's wonderful to watch them go about what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. They've certainly got more meat on the bones than some companions that come afterwards. Not just in the Hartnell era, of course.
No, absolutely. That said, though, Vicky, I think she is one of the most underrated and underestimated companions in 50-something years of Doctor Who. She gives the most wonderful performance in every story. She is engaging, she is fun, she leads the Doctor off on adventures, she carries plot lines, she personally brings about a revolution in the Space Museum. Like, Vicky is so cool.
Yeah, Vicky is tremendous, and I think I've said this before, maybe even on the podcast. Vicky is Susan done right.
Yeah, I think so. I think that a little bit more experience on the part of the production team really made that work. And if you take anything out of this podcast, I would say go back and have another look at Vicky would be something worth doing.
Yeah, agreed.
Where does Stephen sit for you, Rob?
Stephen is like my favourite male 60s companion, Dave.
Oh, wow. Say why.
Yeah, especially when he has a beard. I'm very specific about this.
Go on. Why is this?
I just think he came from the future. He was so interesting. He just seemed a bit more edgier than Ian. You know, I understand why Ian is so well liked, but I think Stephen just has a bit more of an edge to him, and that's always interesting and appealing to me. I just like, you know, Peter Purvis's performance in general. I've long liked Stephen as a companion.
That's interesting. Stephen, the character, isn't someone that ever really fired my imagination or engaged me. But looking back at his era, I've really come to respect at least what an amazingly strong performance Peter Purvis does give in the role.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I'll just add too that I think maybe some of those Target novels that I was getting into with the First Doctor around that era are Stephen stories. You know, when you think of the Massacre, or you think of the Myth Makers, perhaps, or the Time Meddler.
Yes, he's very good in that for a debut story. Katerina and Sarah?
I wouldn't really have much to say about them. They're just there and then they're gone.
Yeah, look, I don't think Katerina really worked. I can kind of see what the idea was, but she was just too far back in history to really be able to comprehend what was going on, and I actually think that's quite a tragic, and certainly her ending is very tragic. Sarah, I think, is a really interesting companion, but again, how she would have worked outside of the Daleks' master plan, I'm not sure. I mean, she does soften up a bit as that story goes on, but yeah, I'm not sure that she would have worked long term.
No, she worked well in the story, but not elsewhere. And yes, with Katerina, I mean, even it was stretching things with Jamie, you know, and the way he'd react to things, but she was way too far back.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the more controversial one of the era, Dorothea Chaplet.
I'll be controversial and say I don't mind her. I really don't. I think, in the Ark, she's the catalyst for what goes on, and I think she's quite fun. I think she gets maligned for the way she left the series, and the way, she wasn't a Barbara, she wasn't a Vicky, and she left the series in an odd way, so she gets remembered for that, and I think that's a bit unfair. I think there's more to her than people maybe give her credit for.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Look, she's not my favourite of the era, and certainly not of the series, but I can remember, again, being a kid and totally buying into her. Whether it was listening to Celestial Toymaker Part 4, or I remember the first time I saw the Ark when I was about 9 or 10. She was just the companion in that story, and she was fine. Okay, she does sort of disappear randomly in the war machines, and yes, you can't blame the actress, because one person's saying to her, do Cockney, and the other person's saying, no, you have to do RP, and it floats between that. Yeah, that's the production team's fault, not hers. Yeah,
exactly.
And Ben and Polly. I wish we had more of Ben and Polly with Hartnell, because I love these companions with Hartnell. They're so much fun, and they just show, because they are the representation of the swinging 60s, and they get on so well with Hartnell and with the First Doctor. That just shows how much a part of that London swinging 60s scene the Doctor really was, and I love these three together.
Oh, look, they freshen up the series in a pretty significant way when they come in, and I'll just add that Stephen's my favourite male companion of the 60s. Polly is my favourite female companion of the 60s. I love Polly very much, and I think with Ben she's fantastic, and like I say, it just freshens the series up. It makes you feel like, okay, we're into the second half of the 60s now, things are happening, things are different to even just a few years ago. I mean, doesn't 1963 feel different to 1966? And yet it's only the difference in modern terms between like 2015 and now, which feels like no difference at all. And yet we look back on that era, and 63 to 66 just seems so remarkably different.
You're right. All sorts of pop culture. I mean, compare a Beatles album from '63 to a Beatles album in '66.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Like huge changes in culture. But if anything, the Doctor sort of blends in with that even better. And again, Ben and Polly feel like real people.
Yes, I mean Polly, when we see her in the War Machines and she's in the nightclub, that's her environment. I buy into the fact that that's where she goes.
Yeah, absolutely, and Ben's just there looking remorseful and drinking, and they engage so humanly. Yeah, really good companions in this era. It is remarkably good. So we'll move on to season 2. I've spoken a bit, Rob. So why don't you lead us off? What are your favourite or most memorable or most interesting stories from Doctor Who's second season?
I've always had a soft spot, Dave, for Dalek Invasion of Earth. Simply because it felt so big and expansive, and out of this and say the Daleks, this is by far my preferred Dalek story. I just love the fact that, you hear the stories years later that they got out at, 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning and were filming in London and places like this, and I just think it gives it a real cinematic feel. And I know there's obviously a movie version of it with Peter Cushing for people who haven't seen it, but to me, the black and white version is scarier. It just feels like a movie from that period. It feels so different to other stories of this season and indeed the Hartnell era. I have a big soft spot for Dalek Invasion of Earth first, and probably the rest of the season second.
Look, I agree with everything you've just said there. I do like the Daleks, the first story. In fact, I like all the Dalek stories. We'll talk about that in a moment. I still stand up and say, in my view, the Dalek Invasion of Earth is the best Dalek story of the last 55 years. I think this is the Daleks at their absolute best. This is the Daleks having come in, and they have conquered Earth, as you said, and you feel that, and it looks it. This is the Daleks at their most cunning. The way that they entrap people and they work around people, and they're just one step ahead of everybody until the very last moment. The Daleks at their most ruthless. There's one such a memorable scene there where, and it happens off screen, Susan and David are escaping the Daleks, and they've gone to hide, and they hear somebody being chased by a Dalek, and you just hear him like, no, you've killed my wife, my family, my children, you've killed them all, no, and then he just gets shot. And it's all off screen, but it's just such a chilling moment. I agree. This is just wonderful Dalek story. Not to say I don't think there are other really good ones, but I think this is probably the pick of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I say it's this story first, the rest of the series second. But there are other good stories here. I mean, the Romans is such fun. Also in the fun vein, the chase. I adore the chase. I know that's a controversial thing to say as well, but I think it's loads of fun.
I think more and more people are learning to love the chase as they discover it. I agree, it's a huge amount of fun. And again, imaginative, creative, and it looks great. I mean, okay, we all know about the production flaws in it. It's 1960s TV, but, some of that stuff in the Mechanoid City, the model work and everything, that's amazingly good quality. And I didn't mention it, but in the Daleks, that second ever Doctor Who story, look at the model work there, look at the special effects work there. That is extraordinarily good.
Oh, look, they're really going for it this season. I mean, Planet of Giants, that's really reaching for the first story of that series. They're trying to do something new there. Dalek Invasion of Earth is just massive. Romans is funny.
The Romans, I have to agree, is just incredibly funny. Like, genuinely laugh out loud funny. And Hartnell is perfect in that. His performance is so good. If ever you are wondering whether Hartnell is capable of a really strong performance or whether he was going slightly ill and crazy and couldn't remember his lines, watch his timing in the Romans, because he is word perfect in that story.
Oh yeah, a lot of the criticisms of Hartnell are cliches and stereotypes that just get perpetuated by fans who I wonder if they've actually seen the episodes sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got a story like The Crusade, which again is just one of these really engaging and lyrical and almost poetic stories with a really interesting and sympathetic portrayal of Saladin and his point of view and King Richard's point of view. And I think that's an amazingly good story. The Rescue is again one that I like. The Web Planet, I love what they've tried to do here. Is this the first time in Doctor Who that ambition doesn't quite come off?
I'm just looking at the list in front of me. I'd say you're probably right. Yeah. Yeah,
I think the first two episodes of the Web Planets are actually really interesting, and those first views of the Zabi and setting up the world, unfortunately, I do think it does drag quite a bit, and by the end where you've sort of got Barbara just sort of lying down, pointing a prop at a sort of dodgy spider effect for about 20 minutes, it's not great. The plot doesn't really hold it off, but I'd rather that they're shooting for the moon and falling short than not trying, and they definitely do that here.
Absolutely. And Dave, when I look at this season, I've waxed lyrical about so many of the stories. I love some of these stories. I still don't think it's as good a season, though, overall, as the first one.
I think Season 2's highs are as high as Season 1's.
I think they're higher in places.
Yeah, possibly. I think that its lows are lower, and that does bring its average down.
Yes.
Look, I think the Space Museum is just tedious. That to me is the first real failure where it just, even the ambition isn't there. I just don't think it works. And I know some people say Part 1 is interesting. No, Part 1 is boring too. It's a story about a bunch of space cliches who have invaded a planet of gay yuppies and or gay students or something, and taken them over, and then it's the rebellion of the effete gay student. I don't know. It's a terrible story.
Yeah.
Vicky's great in it though. But and it ends with the Time Meddler, which the cliffhanger of Part 3. The monk's got a TARDIS. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Oh yeah. Look, what an amazing character, and a character people still talk about to this day as a character they'd like to see again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really, really good stuff. So we've mentioned them a few times. We need to do a little sidebar, Rob, now about the Daleks.
Yeah, of course we do, yes.
Can I just point something out to you that is really obvious but might also blow your mind?
Ooh, okay.
The Daleks are the only recurring monster in the entire Hartnell era.
Wow, okay. Yes. The fan part of my brain is quickly trying to see if you're wrong about that and quickly analysing the stories, but Yeah, you are quite right. I never thought that thought.
Yeah, the Cybermen do turn up in the Hartnell era, but they're not yet a recurring villain.
No, they're not. No.
So we're only getting this entire 3 and a bit seasons of Doctor Who, one recurring monster, and it does recur 4 times. And every one of their stories, I will contend, is really good, if not utterly brilliant.
Yeah, well, I guess they have the benefit of not coming off past stories, so anything they do is going to be new and interesting. But I take your point that they are good stories in their own right, too.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the Daleks, we've talked about Dalek Invasion of Earth, we've said we enjoy the chase. Dalek's Master Plan is coming up. And again, this idea that you can't write good dialogue for the Daleks. Well, watch or listen to the Daleks Master Plan, because there's 13 episodes of really good dialogue. And I like the way that we evolve and develop the Daleks over their 4 stories. The Daleks, their first story, is just an opening. It's a fun adventure with these cool monsters. Then we get to see them really big. We get to see them invading Earth and being really powerful. Then we do something a bit fun with them, a bit different with them in the chase. And then we say, right, let's just take it all up to 11. Let's have the Daleks invading the galaxy in a 13-part story where they almost win because, again, they are cunning, they are clever, they are always just, one step ahead of the Doctor sometimes, one step behind him sometimes. And there is that real back and forth. The Doctor's winning a bit. No, the Daleks are winning a bit. No, the Doctor's winning a bit. No, the Daleks are winning now. Like, it really feels like a battle of equals, battling between the two of them across that whole story for huge, huge stakes.
Yeah. Oh, just amazing stuff. And, let's talk about the creation of the Daleks, because I always like to throw in a shout-out to Ray Cusick for designing them, which I think... And I don't know if this is controversial. I think the design of the Daleks is more important than maybe their backstory.
Look, I think that's a pretty reasonable comment to make. I mean, they just look amazingly different to anything that had ever been seen, and really something that no one has captured again.
And which, when they roll out in modern stories, they still look amazing while still remaining pretty much the same as their original look.
Yeah, and I think that the 60s is the equal best era for the Daleks, equal to the Russell T Davies era.
That's fair. That's very fair, actually.
And 4 of those 660 stories are here. I just think they're all great, and I get why they were as big as they were back then. And I still love Dalek stories. I often find I'll put on a single Dalek story, and then I'll go, I need to watch another one. I'm going to go, and then I'm going to watch another one. I've just got to watch more Dalek stories.
Yeah, there is something about them, that's for sure.
So, season 3. This is an interesting one. I really like it. It's a very controversial in fan wisdom, though.
Yeah, look, I think there are more hits and misses here than in season 2. So it's kind of like when they're really on their game, they're really on their game, and when they're not, they're really not to me. It's hard to say whether I like or dislike the season, because I can see some stories in it I absolutely love, but I can see some stories in it that aren't much good at all.
Well, I'm going to ask you then. I can only see one that I don't think is much good. Which ones do you have on your list?
I'm not a fan of Galaxy 4.
No, that was the one I had. I like the idea, and I like some of the imagination. It doesn't quite work, and it has dated very badly.
And I'm not a fan of the Gunfighters or the Savages.
When was the last time you watched the Gunfighters?
Oh, within the last decade, but it could be like 7 or 8 years.
Maybe give it another try, because every time I watch the Gunfighters, I like it a little bit more. And there are some genuinely laugh-out-loud moments in that. It's not the best historical, certainly, and it's not even the best comedy historical. I think it probably is the weakest of those. But there is some very fun stuff in there, and Hartnell himself is really, really good. Some of that stuff, like, I always like that line where, how well do you know Doc Holliday? He gave me his gun, he extracted my tooth, what more do you want?
Yeah, that's true.
There's some good stuff there, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then the Savages, it just never stood out to me. It's very forgettable.
It is very forgettable. It's an interesting concept. I wonder how that would go down if it was found. I like it, but you're right, it isn't very memorable. But on the other hand, let's say we have some really good stuff in here. I mean, we've just spoken about the epic that is the Daleks master plan. I mean, that really is epic.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Mythmakers, I think, is hilarious.
Yes.
It is brilliant. The characters in that, Priam, Odysseus. Oh, how good is Odysseus? Really, really, really fun concepts in there. And again, some wonderful lines. The bit where Hartnell turns around, "You've just killed this man." "Yes, sir, but in your name."
Yeah.
And look, any story that has episode titles like "Small Profit, Quick Return," or "The Horse of Destruction," I just really love it. Looking at the photos, I reckon the model work on that would have been spectacular.
Yeah, the photos do excite me about that, and that's a story I would really, really love to see. But for me, like the Massacre, again coming from the Target novel, I'm really into. I don't know how it stands up though as an actual story to watch.
I think it's really good. I mean, obviously I've never watched it. I think the audio is really good. Again, it's well written. Again, Hartnell, he's not that far from the end of his run. He gives again a note perfect performance as the Abbot of Amboise. A different character instantly. From the moment you see this person on screen and hear him speak, he's instantly a different character, and he is word perfect, which just goes to show how much of Hartnell's sort of mannerisms and fumbling was acting. And again, Hartnell as the Doctor gives this wonderful monologue at the end of this Massacre. Really, really wonderful monologue. And again, he's perfect in that. So, let's not pretend that this guy was not a strong actor right through the entire era.
Oh, absolutely. And it might be fair to say that the length of these seasons, which we haven't touched on at all here, may have got to him from time to time. Just incredible, the workload. When you look at how many episodes there are in each of these seasons, it's amazing.
Yeah, and when you look at blooper reels for television shows made today, where actors regularly have multiple takes to get through shots, and Hartnell got a few fluffs in a story where they really could only stop the recording on a couple of times per recording. I mean, that's impressive.
Oh, it's super impressive, and it speaks to the sort of acting background he came from versus where modern actors are perhaps at.
It is. So we're in the John Wiles era of the show, which is controversial, but I think has got a lot going for it. I've said many times, the Ark I think is a wonderful story. It's a story that takes that concept of time travel and actually does something interesting with it. I can remember very much at a Doctor Who Club meeting the first time I saw this when I was about 9 or 10 years old, and not knowing what was going to happen, and then they all leave at the end of part 2 and they're like, oh, hang on, I thought it was a 4-part story, and then they come back and, Doctor, they finish the statue, and you pan up, and I was in a room where I reckon, of 20 people, 18 didn't know what was about to happen, and then when you saw that shot of the monoid's head on the top of the statue, this whole room of fans was like, oh, it's a monoid, like, wow.
Yeah, what's happened? Yeah.
And then you come back and not only have you got this great time travel sci-fi adventure, but you've got this story where it's all about learning to love people and respect other races and civilizations. And it's about saying to the humans, you treated the monoids as second-class citizens. And the Doctor points it out. He's a bit busy solving a plague, so he doesn't make it a big deal. But at the end of it, he says, you know what? You treated these guys as slaves. So when they had the chance, they rebelled, and you need to learn to live in peace. You need to learn that whether you're humans or monoids, everybody's equal and everybody deserves the same rights and respects. And it's not bashed over the head. It's just such a wonderful message, though, and I think it's such a wonderful story. I think it's Doctor Who at its best. I really do.
Yeah, no, the Ark to me is underrated. Based on where I think it is in fandom, my perception of it in fandom, I think it's a much better story than people think.
Well, I've got to ask, what do you think of Toymaker?
Well, I was about to bring that up. I really like this, and again, it's because of the Target novel, I think. Obviously, I haven't seen 3 of the episodes for real, so it is the novel that I'm basing this on. I always thought this was a wonderful story. I know people get a bit hung up on the fact he is a Celestial Toymaker, and we shouldn't be saying those things today, but, oh gosh, I just get past that, and I look at the story itself. I think playing these deadly games, and the concept of this being who is so powerful. I find all that sort of stuff really interesting. I think a modern version of this could be done, wonderfully.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think part 4 is really good, and it really captured my imagination as a kid. Again, the Target novel, the same for me. I think it does lose its way a little bit in part 3, which is the key episode. I think that's actually a bit slow and dull. But as for the Celestial thing, well, I always thought Celestial meant cosmic, and he was a cosmic Toymaker.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's fair, and I think I thought the same when I was a kid as well.
Mm-hmm. How innocent we were.
Oh, yes. Still am, Dave.
We try. So just a final little sort of breakaway chat here. The First Doctor in other things. Now, his VHS tapes, he had some of the first VHS tapes to come out. Stuff like the Daleks, Dalek Invasion, Aztecs. They actually all came out relatively early in the run, which was really good to see.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're good stories in themselves, but also I think there was the most interest in going back to the black and white era from fans. Even though for many fans they hadn't seen Pertwee's or Baker's or whatever, and they perceived that they were probably great episodes. I think just the mystique and allure of these 60s episodes, which at the time seemed so old. They were maybe like 20, 25 years old at the time, but it seems so long ago.
I know. It was closer to us then than the McCoy era is to us now.
Yeah, that's just disturbing.
It is, isn't it? But again, they were complete. There were a lot of complete Hartnells. And at that stage, there was, 2 complete Troutons? Crotons and Mindrobber? Oh, and Seeds of Death. And War Games.
That's right.
But they're all season 6s, yeah.
VHS, yeah.
Yeah, until Tomb was found, yeah. So there were a lot more Hartnell. So we got a lot of stuff from him. His novels, obviously the first 3 Doctor Who novelisations were all Hartnells.
But then they get ignored for a long, long time, which is why in those years for me, 87, 88, 89, when I was really getting into things, there were a lot of Hartnells popping out because they'd been ignored for so long. And suddenly we were up to, okay, we've got to do the Hartnells now. That's
right. And as such, they were in that latter run of Targets where they were again doing a lot more with them. So you're right, stuff like Massacre and Toymaker and Smugglers and Savages and the rest of them, they were all really good books. I mean, The Rescue, Ian Marter turns a 2-part story into a larger than normal Target book. And even then, some of the older ones, like Terence Dix's work on Dalek Invasion of Earth or An Unearthly Child, yeah, really good stuff. So I think the Hartnell era was very fortunate in that sense.
Totally agree.
The audio tracks of the missing stories are all available, and I would regularly, once a year, I would go through my missing Hartnell story CDs, or now I've got them on the iPhone, but I would listen to the Massacre and the Mythmakers and Master Plan and Marco Polo, because I do enjoy them, and it's great to have them all cleaned up so well.
Yeah, look, it's just amazing they were captured back in the day, because the fans who did it didn't know that the episodes were going to get junked. It's just an incredible, amazing fluke, because, how many other shows did fans do that for? Probably not many.
No, that's absolutely right. I'll mention in the Virgin Missing Adventure range, Venusian Lullaby and The Plotters were 2 standout Hartnells for me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Hartnell does turn up in the 3 Doctors and the 5 Doctors, and I love him in the 3 Doctors because even with his health declining, when he's on screen, Pertwee and Troughton still defer to him, and he's still the Doctor, the first one. And I know that he's sick at the time, and he hasn't got long to live at that stage, but when he's sitting there and just lecturing them, you just feel like he's still the Doctor.
Oh, absolutely. And look, you mentioned him being in the 5 Doctors. Obviously, he has the cameo at the start before the credits. But if we're going to talk about, other actors playing him like Herndl in 5 Doctors, I think we've got to talk about last year's Christmas special, Dave.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to go on about it. I said at the time, and I've said since, I think that Moffat really missed the point of the First Doctor. I do think he was writing the First Doctor as the fan memory, not as the real thing. And, there's a lot of stories that the new series has done that haven't worked for me or I haven't liked. And generally after I watch them, I get a bit annoyed, a bit angry, and then sort of just move on. And, well, other people like them, I don't care. I don't have to watch them again. Who cares? But I haven't forgiven this story, Rob, I've got to say, and I'm not going to get angry and worked up about it, but I just think it was a really disappointing portrayal of the First Doctor. I really do.
Yeah, and it's not just fan memory. It's a kind of a, not nasty, I won't go that far, but it's certainly an impolite sort of fan memory of Hartnell as well. You know, it's trying to be a bit narky about him, and I didn't like that. And we're going back into Capaldi's final series now, which I don't really want to do, but you look at Capaldi's final 2 episodes, they're fantastic, and then he gets that Christmas special that's just horrible, and Hartnell's all wrong, and it's just yuck.
The Hartnell Doctor was fun.
Yes.
And he had a twinkle in his eye.
He was Yoda.
He was Yoda, and I don't think that was captured, and that's a shame. I think Herndl went a reasonable way to catching that, but even then he was sort of, the grumpy version of Hartnell. There wasn't quite the fun as much as there could have been. But I'm glad that he's still remembered though.
Yeah, why couldn't he have shown up being all giggly and twinkly and, and getting Bill on his arm and leading off with her and, sort of leaving Capaldi in his dust? That would have been funny, but in a charming way. Yeah,
or you look at the relationship that the First Doctor has with Vicky particularly, or with Barbara, or with Polly, and it is this really respectful relationship. Yes. It really is, and I wish we could have seen him interacting with Bill that way, but... Look, we can't. I think we've made our point, and we should move on.
Yeah, let's.
Season 4, Hartnell does appear in that. Look, there's only 2 stories. The Smugglers, I think, is forgettable as well, but it's perfectly nice, decent. I listened to that audio a little while ago.
He's not really in much of it, is he?
No, he has his little own plot, though, and he is the one that resolves the plot, and so that's good. It's a nice story. The 10th Planet. That's a really good story.
Oh, well, for the monster it introduces and the fact it's a final story for a Doctor, and the first time a Doctor has a final story, it's mythic even before you see it the first time. You're just expecting big things from it, and I don't think it really disappoints.
No, I think it is really good, and as a final story for Hartnell, I think it works. It's a shame that he wasn't able to be in Part 3, but in Part 2... his first confrontation with the Cybermen is epic. It really, really is. The Cybermen in the 10th Planet, these are big, 7-foot-tall, imposing, terrifying things. And Hartnell goes head-to-head with them, face-to-face with them, and he holds his own. And it's something that I think the Doctor needs to be able to do, and I don't think every Doctor manages it. I compare a couple of later Doctors' interactions with the Cybermen where it doesn't work like that. But, Hartnell's love, pride, hate, fear speech, that's amazing.
You're very kind for not mentioning the well-cooked meal from Davo.
He wasn't the only one I was thinking of there.
You're very kind.
But yeah, that is a really strong performance still. And the Doctor, right up until... that regeneration starts to kick in Part 4, he's totally in command. And also just having fun.
Oh, look, absolutely. It's a great, great final story. One of the best.
I agree. So, to wrap things up, we've got a couple of questions. We're going to do our favourites and then our missing stories we want to see return. So, I've picked 5 favourites, Rob. How about you?
I've picked 3. I could pick 5 very easily, but I picked 3.
I could pick 10 very easily, so I picked 5. So, Rob, let's go back and forth with our picks. I'll start, given that I've got 5 and you've got 3. My first pick, probably not a surprise given some of the things I've said about it, is going to be Marco Polo.
Fantastic. Not a snap for me, but if I was going to pick 5, that would be one of my extras.
Yeah, really, really good story. If you haven't gone out and listened to the audios of this recently, listeners, I encourage you to listen to Marco Polo.
There's a reason people always, as part of the Omni rumour, say that Marco Polo's been found too. I think it's the story that pushes more buttons than any other in terms of if that had been found, it would just excite so many people.
Absolutely, and being the only completely missing story in that first season and a half, I think also makes it, people just go, how can it be missing?
I know, it's maddening.
Yeah. What's your number 1, Rob?
My number one, Dave, is no surprise because I've already waxed lyrical about it. Dalek Invasion of Earth.
Snap. Yeah, look, I think we've both waxed about that one, so yep, fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
My next one, again, one we've spoken about, it's that epic story, the Daleks Master Plan.
Yeah, not a snap for me, but epic. Absolutely epic. And wasn't it exciting when there were 2 target novels for it?
Yes, yeah. And then when episode 2 turned up, and that's really good.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Your second, Rob?
My second is one I've also spoken about, so again, no surprise, and I'm doing it just to be a bit controversial. It's The Chase.
Very cool. Not a snap from me, but totally appreciate where you're coming from.
Just a story that bounces from location to location, and you never, ever get bored.
No, I get that. I had to have another historical on my list, so I have included the Aztecs. I could have had a couple of the comedy ones, like the Mythmakers of the Romans. The Crusade's really good, but I think the Aztecs and Marco Polo are the 2 best historicals. They're really, really good.
Yeah, agreed. For me, my third pick, Dave, is, this might not be a surprise, but I haven't really spoken about it at all in this episode. I have spoken about the companions, though, and it's the War Machines.
Interesting. Okay, I don't get that excited about the War Machines. I like it, I respect it, but it's not a favourite of mine. Why is it a favourite of yours?
It's a favourite of mine, and I completely appreciate that it's not like a stone-cold classic like some of the others we could mention. But I think it's an example of a very different kind of Hartnell story. It's like when we look at the later Troughton stories and we say, oh, they're a precursor to Pertwee. I look at this and say, well, this is a precursor to Troughton. And it's just giving us Doctor Who in a different context. He's in modern-day London. He hadn't been doing that for, all of his run, basically. And suddenly he's in modern-day London. There's new companions. I just really quite like it. I think it's great.
Fair enough.
But I understand it's not a classic. I understand that's a very weird one to bring up. But I just have a thing for it.
No, that's fair enough. And in fact, for my final pick, I've also picked a unusual but personal choice, and that is The Rescue.
Oh, well, The Rescue's great. And again, the target novel was what got me into it the first time. But what a wonderful little story that's just so entertaining to watch.
It is, and it's particularly good for Hartnell, whether it's those early scenes in the TARDIS where he's missing Susan, whether it's him getting excited to discover that he's back on the planet Dido, right through to the way that after Barbara's messed up with Vicky, the Doctor just comes in and he wins her trust and her confidence in such a lovely way, through to that final confrontation where Hartnell, alone in this big empty room, stands up to Bennett or Ququillian and just calls him out, and there is that wonderful moment where Hartnell has been wonderful, and he's called him out, and I know who you are and I know what you've done and you're a murderer and you're a disgrace and all the rest of it. And Bennett goes, well, what are you going to do? And suddenly Hartnell goes, you can see in his face going, oh damn, I'm alone in a room with a killer. Oops. And it's a wonderful performance, and I just really like The Rescue.
Yeah, no, it is a very good one. Good choice.
Thank you, Robert. No, that's a good list. So we also said we'll do 3 picks of missing stories we wanted to come back. Now, I've limited myself to completely missing stories because I think that's fair. But I'll let you go first for this one, Rob.
Okay, The Massacre.
Fair enough. Not on my list, but could be.
Not excited by it?
I am excited by it. It's just not in my top 3.
Okay, what's yours?
Look, no surprising, given it was a favourite story, Marco Polo.
Snap.
Yeah, I think we've explained why. I'll give you another one of mine then, The Mythmakers.
Yeah, that would be good.
Again, I think it's very witty. I think it's very clever. And I think it's seeing the performances, especially from the regulars, and seeing the model work would really elevate that story.
Yeah, agreed.
The final one now, Rob, because you had a snap in there.
Yeah, final one for me, and this is a no-brainer, Dalek's Master Plan.
Yeah, if I wasn't limiting myself to completely missing ones, that would have been in my 3. It is epic, I'd love to see it back. But I went with the Toymaker.
Oh, well, see, I would love that.
Again, I just think the visuals on that would be so interesting.
All right, we can trade tapes on that one.
Excellent. Well, look, that's our chat about Hartnell. I could go on for hours and hours and hours.
I know, Dave. Oh, we could still be here this time next week if we really got into it. But I think that's a nice, succinct taster, almost, for people who maybe aren't as au fait with the Hartnell era, to hear that there's some really good stuff in there if you just dig in. And for those who do enjoy it, yes, hopefully we've matched with some of your own opinions. And if we haven't, write in and tell us.
Yeah, please write in and give us some thoughts. And maybe if you do go out and check out a few Hartnell stories that you've never seen before and you check them out for the first time, that'll be really interesting too.
Very good stuff. Okay, so we're at the end of the show. Before we go, though, we've got a few things to talk about, part of which is fan feedback, which is always quite exciting, including 2 iTunes reviews this time around.
Yes, that's very, very exciting. And if you haven't given us a review, we would love you to do so. Rob, do you want to read the first one?
Absolutely, and I'll just say, this is how people can find our podcast on iTunes, or Apple Podcasts as it's now called. So if you can write us a review, we hardly ever ask for them, but it would be lovely if you could. The first one has the title of Brilliant, and it's from Robert Michael Kelly in Australia, and he simply says, a great podcast for all fans of Doctor Who. Thank you, Robert. That's awesome.
Thank you very much. The second one we have is a little longer. It's from Marky Woo Woo in the UK.
Hello, Marky Woo Woo.
And it says, if you only subscribe to One Who podcast, make it this one. Their love for the show is evident, and they constantly provide quality, new and engaging topics, besides being adorable in themselves and the ideal double act.
Aww.
We finally become a Holmesian double act, Rob.
Hey!
It goes on to say, sometimes I scream, no, you've got that wrong. Sometimes I yell, at last someone has said what I feel. And occasionally, I wish I'd thought of that. But all the time I feel this is the crackling fire in a quiet pub on a blustery day with the demons playing while I relax with a big smile on my face. Random Fandom is equally entertaining with a more adult British take. This is the podcast channel that all others want to be. Someone needs to produce a podcast about their love of this podcast. Thank you, Rob and Dave, for altruistically transmitting their love. Also check out Spacefall, the Blake 7 themed cousin to this.
And Dave, Marky Woo Woo must be listening to some of our older episodes if they're still hearing Random Fandom episodes. So a big shout out to Jim and Bob, who used to do those for us.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, and finally, an email. This is from Ben PM over in Perth, Western Australia. Ben's written to us in the past. He says, hello, fellow Whovians. I really enjoyed your Companions episode, which is the one we did with Mike Solko, Dave. But I definitely felt I should email you in defence of the much-beloved K9, who you both scored with a criminally low 5 out of 10. Oh, God, I've slagged K9 earlier in this episode as well.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, I'm in trouble with Ben now. At one point, you compared K9 negatively to R2-D2. Imagine the original Star Wars trilogy without R2-D2. They would be very different films. R2-D2's sarcastic humour brought a levity to the whole thing, and I feel like K9 did, at times, a similar thing with the Doctor. I recently read the Target novelisation of Doctor Who and the Androids of Tara by the estimable Terence Dix, and K9's dialogue and role in the story, while not huge, is fantastic and an important part of the glue of the whole thing. Obviously, opinions are like... Everybody has one, and I'm by no means angry that you disagree with me, but surely I'm not the only listener out there who loves K9. Dave, are you with me? Thanks for a great podcast. All the best, Ben PM. P.S. I've attached a photo of my stupid grinning face crouching next to K9 at the Doctor Who experience a few years back, illustrating how happy this 5 out of 10 companion makes me. Cheers! So, Dave, are you with him?
I'm more with him than I'm with you.
Ah, okay.
I think that K9 has got some naff stories, but I think he's got some good stories. And again, as a kid, I remember totally buying him and totally engaging with him. And I'm glad he was in Doctor Who.
Alrighty. Let's move on from the feedback just to mention what we're doing on the show when Series 11 begins. Obviously, Dave, this means we can't record on a Sunday afternoon like we used to and edit the show and put it out, within hours of the episode dropping. But we'll still be trying to get out a regular review each week, probably by about Wednesday of each week. Yeah,
our reviews will still be hot takes, in the sense that we will record the review as soon as we've watched it, so it's fresh, it's new, and it is a hot take. The problem is going to be that we won't be watching it for a couple of days later than we normally would, because of the timing. We're not going to get up at 4 a.m, watch Doctor Who on a Monday morning, and record a podcast and then go to work. That's just not happening, sorry. So they will still be hot takes, but they will be delayed hot takes.
That's right. And for our monthly episodes, while Series 11 is on, we'll be doing all the usual news and views and, just chatting and BSing around. But we will also do some longer form thoughts on collections of episodes that we've seen. And I think they could be quite interesting too in their own right, because they won't be hot takes. That'll be our more considered opinions. That's
right, and we'll mix it up with our usual mini topics and outros and all that sort of thing. So there'll be a bit of non-Season 11 stuff in there as well.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, not Doctor Who related, but British, phenomenon related, in the last couple of months I've rewatched all 8 Harry Potter films.
All 8?
All 8.
Oh, wow. And what did you make of it?
It was interesting. Some of them, this was the first time I'd seen them since they've been in the cinema, and some of them I'd seen them 3-4 times, on DVD or repeats or whatever. The ones that I remember being good were still good. I think the first movie is a wonderful movie in its own right, and I thought I'd be a bit bored by it, seeing it for the 4th or 5th time, but I was really engaged by it. Chamber of Secrets, the second one, remains my favourite. Interestingly, though, number 6, which is the Half-Blood Prince, probably jumped up to number 2 on my list. I didn't remember that being that great when I saw it in the cinema, but watching it back now, 4, 5, maybe 6 years later, I really enjoyed the Half-Blood Prince. I still think Goblet of Fire is a bit pedestrian. I still think The Prisoner of Azkaban, although I know it's a fan favourite, I think it's pretty terrible.
Is Goblet of Fire where they all have good hair? They've all grown their hair? Is that Goblet of Fire?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, they all look pretty cool in that one.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Number 5, The Order of the Phoenix, I didn't like it at all when it was in the cinema, and I didn't like it at all now. I think the plot is just motionless. In the book, I have read that book, and there's a lot of sort of stuff about Harry's introspection, him being a grumpy and hormone-driven teenager, which kind of works in the book, but in the movie, it's just him being a dick to everyone for 2 hours.
Yes, true.
And the final ones, look, I liked them more than when I saw them in the cinema. I still think splitting them into 2 movies is terrible, and there's got to be a really good fan edit of those into a good sort of 2.5-hour movie. The first one starts off really well and then sort of goes nowhere because it just ends in the middle of a book. The second one, I think they stretch the ending a bit too long. The Battle of Hogwarts starts a full 70 minutes before the end of the movie. And unfortunately, in all the other movies, Rob, as someone who's not read all the books, and the ones I've read, I've only read once, I always felt that they were accessible to me, that there was time taken just enough to explain what was going on to a non-fan. Unfortunately, in the final one, there's stuff going on. I'm just going, what the hell just... Why isn't he dead? And why is he... And why is she dead? And why is he come back to life? What's going... what's going on? And it didn't make sense to me. It's very dramatic. It works very well. The deaths resonate really well. It's a good movie. It lacks explanation, but the epilogue, Rob, oh my God. Epilogues work in books. They don't work on screens. It's such a shame because that last shot before the epilogue, where it's just Harry, Hermione and Ron, and you've got the destroyed Hogwarts in the background, and there's no dialogue. They're just looking at each other going, we've been through some stuff.
Yeah. And
we're still here and we're together, but it's just a wonderful shot that pulls back and it pulls back. You see that Hogwarts, and then it fade to black again. And I remember seeing that the first time going, that's how you end a franchise. That is so classy.
Yeah.
And then you cut to, a bunch of 20-year-olds trying to play 40-year-olds, and oh my God, it's terrible. Complete with Ginny Weasley and a Julia Gillard wig. It's just so bad.
Yes.
So bad.
Know.
Why did they do it? But, look, I have to say, although there's a couple of movies I'm a bit down on, for a collection of 8, I was really impressed with these movies. They do hold up very well. Some of the CGI in The Philosopher's Stone is showing its age, I have to say. Most of it looks great, but there are a few shots you go, wow, this really was sort of 15 years ago.
Yeah, and we talked about Jurassic Park being the Star Wars for some generations. I think the Harry Potter movies are that for others. Yeah,
I think so too. I approach them very much as a fan of movies generally. I'm not engaged with them as a fan on that level. But watching them as a fan of movies, yeah, I was really impressed by most of them.
Yeah. All right, quick one from me. Not only is Doctor Who returning very, very soon, but Riverdale returns on October 10th, Dave. Riverdale, my guilty pleasure.
Yes, I need to catch up on the end of Season 2. I'm only halfway through it, so I will do that shortly. That's a priority for me now. And yeah, that'll be interesting.
Oh gosh, if you think Season 2's bonkers already from wherever you're up to, it just gets more and more bonkers.
Okay, I'll be ready for that. And finally, 3 quick plugs, if I may.
Yes.
First of all, I think we need to say congratulations to Nathan from Flight Through Entirety, our fellow Australian podcast, who got married on the weekend.
Yes, to Calvin. I saw the pictures on Facebook. Isn't that wonderful?
It is. So congratulations to both of them. And, congratulations on releasing a podcast that day as well.
They're multi-talented.
They are. I mentioned that the Goodies DVD box set from Network is coming out now. I think they've been arriving in people's letterboxes for the last week or so and will continue to do so. I think Network is literally just trying to get these boxes out of the way. Mine has arrived, and it is an absolutely gorgeous set. There's 2 books in there. There's the full 12-disc set. I've watched a couple. The restoration is pretty damn good. There are some deleted, censored scenes restored to a couple of episodes. So I did race out and watch those last night. There's some CDs. There's a bag. And the Goodies Pirate podcast does get a mention in the updated Andrew Pixley book.
Oh, that's really good. That's excellent.
So if anybody out there has thought, I wouldn't have minded listening to that podcast about the Goodies, but I can't watch along with it because I don't have the episodes, now is your chance to go out and do so.
That's right. And we should say this box with the books in it and so on was a very limited run. It was a run of just 1,000, I think, Dave.
Something like that. I suspect there will be another run soon because I know a lot of people missed out and want to have a copy.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, it'll be available as just like a big sort of box with about 10 discs in it or something like that?
12 discs. It's all 12. The BBC series, yeah.
Yeah, mine hasn't lobbed here yet. I think it's arrived at my parents', but I haven't gone up there to pick it up. I get everything delivered to my parents.
And finally, I just wanted to give a plug out to another Australian podcast, New to Who. Their episode this month will be out probably the same time as ours, but next month, if you enjoyed listening to me talk about my love for Hartnell in this podcast, well, next month I will be guesting on New to Who, and we will be talking about a Hartnell story.
I know which one.
Yes, you do. But I'll leave that as a surprise. That's New to Who's announcement to make. But
yes, not for us to say.
No, look, very, very, very great of Steve and Dan to invite me on. They wanted to do a Hartnell story, and they decided I was the biggest fan in Australia to get, and that's very kind of them. So I really enjoyed talking about a Hartnell story, but Hartnell in general on their podcast. So that'll be out in a month's time. So check it out.
Yeah, a wonderful podcast, which we've both been on now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, really, really good stuff. The podcasting scene in Australia, I'll just wax lyrical for a moment. You think of us, you think of New to Who, you think of, say, Flight Through Entirety, and we're all fans, but we're doing quite different things with the shows. I think anyone out there who listens to podcasts could listen to all 3 of us and not feel they were sort of doubling up on thoughts or topics, even if we all discuss the same thing on a particular episode. I think we'd all present it in such a different way. It's just really fun to be part of.
Yeah, and we all chat. We're all sort of in communication. We've met up in when we've been able to last year, actually earlier this year, and indeed, 42 to Doomsday had a surprise episode out last month.
They did indeed. So if you haven't had your podcatcher tuned to 42 to Doomsday for a little while, they dropped a little nugget, Dave.
They absolutely did. And again, you talk about different tone. Well, they are a different tone. They are their own special, unique tone.
Yeah, and that was a particularly fun episode, I've got to say.
Yes, so look, we do enjoy our fellow Australian Doctor Who podcasts. And we should probably mention as well, if we talk about podcasts we like, Diddly Dum is about to release their 100th episode, so congratulations to them.
Oh, gosh, yeah. There's a bunch of podcasts that all started around the same sort of time, and they're all sort of ripening, Dave, or maturing like a fine wine.
They are. We may mention their 100th when we've listened to it, hopefully in a month's time.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun too.
Excellent. Well, we've covered a lot today, but I've really enjoyed this one, Rob. It's been very special for me.
Yeah, I'm so glad we got to do it, even if it did take a year after we did Davo.
No, that's okay. We can't rush through the Doctors. There are only 13 of them. We'll have to decide what we're going to do next year, Rob.
Yes. Well, we can decide that. I think the next few months, Dave, are going to be a lot of Series 11. People will be sick of hearing us talk about Series 11 by December 31st. But during this time, I think we'll plan something special for next year.
We will. Well, the next time you hear us, we will be talking Season 11. So get excited.
Yeah, it's kind of wild now that it's actually happening. Exciting.
Bring it on.
Okay. Until then, I've been Rob.
And I've been Dave.
We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye. You've been listening to The Doctor Who Show, the podcast where too much Doctor Who is barely enough. Subscribe to us on iTunes or listen through the website at www.thedwshow.net. Write to us at hello@thedwshow.net or send us a quickie on Twitter @thedwshow. Facebook.com/The DW Show is also a good place to find us if you're so inclined. Our version of the Doctor Who theme arranged by George Locke. Look him up on YouTube, folks. This podcast is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. Doctor Who, all names and sounds, and any other related items are trademarks and/or copyrights of the BBC. All other trademarks and trade names are properties of their respective owners. The official Doctor Who website can be found at www.bbc.co.uk/Doctor Who.